Welcome to Spiritual Calisthenics. Christ is in our midst. On June 3rd, we commemorate St. Lucillian of Byzantium, the four martyred youths, and Paula the Virgin, St. Athanasios the Wonderworker, and St. Kevin, the Abbot of Glendalough. Regarding St. Lucillian of Byzantium, formerly a priest of the idols near Nicomedia, the saint came to the Christian faith in his old age. This was during the reign of Aurelian. Lucillian was brought before Sylvan the Count. When he refused to return to the service of the idols, his jaw was broken. He was beat with rods and hanged upside down, then imprisoned with 4 Christians, who were all children, Claudius, Hypatius, Paul, and Dionysius. All of them were brought out again before Sylvan. Remaining constant in their faith, were cast into a raging furnace. Preserved unharmed, they were sent to Byzantium, where the children were beheaded, and Lucillian was crucified. The Virgin Paula, a Christian, buried their holy relics. For this, she was taken before the Count, and refusing to sacrifice to the idols, was stripped naked and mercilessly thrashed. After other torments, she was beheaded in 270. There was a church in their honor in Constantinople. Let us all entreat Christ the Lord's holy martyrs, for they make supplication for our soul's salvation. With faith, with longing, therefore let us draw nigh unto them, for they overflow with the divine grace of healings, and they drive away the ranks of demons and terrors as guardians of the faith. Regarding St. Kevin of Glendalough, St. Kevin was born in the year 498 in the Irish province of Leinster to noble parents, perhaps even descendants of the kings of Leinster. Tradition holds that when he was born, his mother felt no labor pains, and the snow that fell on the day of his birth melted as it fell around the house. An angel is said to have appeared during the child's baptism, telling his parents that the child should be named Kevin. St. Cronan, the officiating priest, said, "This was surely an angel of the Lord, and as he named the child, so shall he be called." So the babe was baptized Kevin. Cogman in the Irish tongue, which means he of blessed birth, is the first person in history to be called Kevin. His childhood was marked by a horrible temper and dislike of other people, although he loved animals. This is one of the reasons why St. Kevin is one of the patron saints of animals. At the age of 7, his parents sent him to the monastery run by St. Petra in Cornwall, while there, Kevin was kneeling, his arms outstretched in prayer, on the first day of Lent in a small hut in the wilderness, when a blackbird landed in his palm and proceeded to construct a nest. Kevin remained perfectly still so as to not disturb the bird. For the whole of Lent, Kevin was fed by the blackbird with berries and nuts. By the end of Lent, the blackbird hatchlings had flown from the nest, which now lay empty in his hand, and Kevin returned to the monastery for the Paschal celebration. After being ordained to the priesthood, Kevin spent 7 years as a hermit in the mount surrounding Glendalough, which comes from the Gaelic word glen, meaning valley, and lough, meaning lake, meaning valley of the 2 lakes. He lived in a small 5x7 by 3-foot cave, now known as St. Kevin's Bed, which was, legend holds, shown to him by an angel. His life was spent in prayer and self-denial, and he lived off herbs and fish. An otter that lived in the lake would bring Kevin whatever Kevin visited the lake, which he did in the winter, when he would stand up to his neck in the ice-cold water to pray. During one of these sessions of prayer in the upper lake of Glendalough, which he preferred to the lower lake because it was much more remote and colder, he dropped his breviary into the lake. An otter appeared from the bottom of the lake with the prayer book, unstained and damaged in any way, in its mouth. Henceforth, the otter would bring fish to Kevin for food. Kevin returned to society when a farmer named Dima followed a cow of his who would constantly wander off. The cow would come every day when the herd was sent out to pasture to St. Kevin's cave and lick his clothes and feet while he was in prayer. When the cow returned at evening, she would produce unbelievable amounts of milk. Dima, wondering greatly about this, one day resolved to follow the cow. When Dima stumbled upon Kevin's cave and saw what was the cause of this, he fell to his knees in penitence. Kevin raised him up, and as Dima was a pagan, taught the farmer about Christ and the gospel. Dima eventually begged Kevin to come out of his isolation and teach his family about Christ. After a day of prayer, Kevin saw that it was God's will that he returned to society to spread the gospel. He began by teaching Dima's family, but his tutelage soon grew to dozens of families, and he began to attract followers. And so, seeing the need of a central place from which to teach, Kevin decided to establish a monastery. However, Kevin could not establish a monastery since King O'Toole of Glendalough, a pagan, would not allow it. It happened that the king had a much-beloved pet goose, which was now old and gray. As time passed, the goose also became so aged and weak that it was soon unable to fly. As a result, the king was very upset, for he loved the goose very much. Hearing of Kevin's sanctity and power, the pagan king sent for him and asked that he make the beloved goose young. Kevin asked for a payment of whatever land the goose would fly over. As the goose could no longer take flight, O'Toole agreed. When Kevin touched the bird, it grew young and flew over the entire valley of Glendalough, and on that site the monastery was established. Rocks were plentiful. The farmers pitched in and built Kevin a monastery in the solitude of Glendalough. The workers agreed to work from when the larks woke till the lambs slept. The grueling work schedule began to affect the quality of construction, and Kevin decided to investigate. It turned out that the larks were apt to rise unfashionably early, and so Kevin told them not to. That day forth, no skylark ever has been heard in Glendalough. The construction continued, and the monastery was complete. Soon other monks came to help teach all who had come to learn, old and young, rich and poor alike. More buildings were added to the little settlement. Among them was the famous tower, which still stands today along with the large huts used by St. Kevin. Many people from far afield came to Kevin for advice, which he gave freely, and the monastery grew to such fame and renown that it was considered equal to a pilgrimage to Rome for a penitent to travel 7 times to Glendalough Monastery. It is said of Kevin that he was the fulfillment of the prophecy of St. Patrick, that he was the one to come who would evangelize the region of Ireland just south of Dublin. Kevin went once upon the founding of his monastery to Rome, where he received relics for the monastery. Many years later, his hair and beard white but his eyes sparkling, and his step quick and firm, he felt the desire to go once again to Rome. However, he also knew he was bound to the duties of the abbot as the abbot of the monastery. He went for advice to his old friend Bishop Keeman of Pluminois. Kieran understood Kevin's longing, but he knew that it was better for one's missionary to train many others than to leave others half-trained in order to go to the missions himself. Birds do not hatch their eggs while they are flying, Kieran said. Kevin saw that not to go was a sacrifice, and he knew now where God's will lay. So Kevin continued to teach and advise everyone who came to him until the peaceful June night in 618, when his soul sped heavenward to join the angels and saints around God's throne. The precise location of Kevin's grave is lost, although it is said that at dusk, when no one is about, blackbirds will flock to an unmarked cross above a forgotten grave, the grave of a wild boy who held the blackbird's nest in his unnerving outstretched hand for 40 days. Because of St. Kevin's affinity for animals, there are many miracles that are attached to him. It is said that a hunting party was chasing a boar with hounds. The boar came upon St. Kevin in prayer beneath a tree and laid down at his feet. The hounds, when they saw the boar at Kevin's feet, also laid down near the saint, not daring to approach the boar while it was under Kevin's protection. The men decided to ignore these signs and to go ahead and slay the boar. However, a flock of birds landed on the tree, and the hunters took this as a sign and left the boar with Kevin. Thou was privileged to live to the age of saints, O Father Kevin, being baptized by one saint, taught by another, and buried by a third. Pray to God that he will raise up saints in the hour and the day to our help, support, and guide us to the way of salvation. The readings are according to the week. From St. Paul's letter to the Romans. Brethren, the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and wickedness of men, who by their wickedness suppress the truth. Truth meaning the morals and the principles of God. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. In other words, God has revealed all truth to mankind. This is one of the reasons why we're going to see later on down in the letter to the Romans that there are things that are natural truth versus revealed truth. Revealed truths, which are the truths that are explicitly stated within the Holy Scriptures and the prophecies, versus things that are just inherently known. Ever since the creation of the world, his invisible nature, namely his eternal power and deity, has been clearly perceived by the things that have been made. Meaning that all creation, whether they were Jews or not, have stories of creation, mythologies, understandings of religion, meaning that there is something intrinsic inside of us that knows that there is a creator, knows that there are certain things that we ought not to do. St. Nectarios talks about this in his work Christology, talking about the expectation of the nations, that all nations were expecting a Christ. So they are without excuse, for although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinkings, and their senseless minds were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man or birds or animals or reptiles. Therefore, God gave them up in the lusts of their hearts to impurity, to the dishonoring of their bodies among themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this reason, God gave them up to dishonorable passions. So now St. Paul is going to talk about all the manners of sin, that when we do not worship God in the natural way that God ordained for us, where we give ourselves up to idolatry, whether it's idolatry worshiping of an animal, of a graven image, of a concept, or even of our own selves. This is what ultimately happens. This is the slippery slope of sin. Their women exchanged the natural relations for unnatural, and the men likewise gave up natural relations with women and were consumed with passion for one another, men committing shameless acts with men and receiving in their own persons the due penalty for their error. Now, of course, this is talking about sexual immorality, in which we, instead of using one another to give glory to God, to bring forth children into the world, we are using our bodies for sexual immorality and for our own dark pleasures. The Gospel according to St. Matthew. The Lord said to his disciples, "Unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. You have heard that it was said to the men of old, 'You shall not kill. Whoever kills shall be liable to judgment.' But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother without cause shall be liable to judgment." So Christ our God is looking at the letter of the law and the spirit of the law, because the scribes and the Pharisees are talking about the letter of the law, and they live outwardly righteous lives, but inward they are full of hatred and venom. And so Christ is talking about the idea of what it means to kill. It is not just the idea of physically killing, the idea of spiritually killing. Whoever insults his brother shall be liable to the council, and whoever says, "You fool," shall be liable to the hell of fire. So if you're offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Make friends quickly with your accuser while you're going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guards, and you be put in prison. Truly I say to you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny. In other words, it is to our benefit to ask forgiveness of those that we have wronged, and to forgive those who have wronged us. This idea of forgiveness, forgiving the debts of others, is found within the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our trespasses, forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors, as we forgive our trespasses. When we forgive, we will be forgiven. And we have to forgive in our heart. When we say in our hearts, "Oh, you're a fool," even if I don't say it out loud, even if I don't cause you physical harm, I am harming you. It is possible for us to cause spiritual and, by extension, physical harm to a person by our negative thoughts. I hope that you've enjoyed today's Spiritual Calisthenics. Have a blessed and wonderful day.